I requested that song today because it fits with the sermon. And how that song came about, how I was reminded of it, is kind of interesting. Now, I left my house and I made it all the way out to 71. I'm trucking along, like I do. Get all the way back into town. I'm zigzagging through Butler, right? Getting my miles in. Because, well, that's what I got to do, because if I don't, I'll get really chubby. And I don't like being really chubby, so, I get down by Southside Park on Walnut Street, and there's these nasty big clouds coming. So I'm walking along thinking, okay, I'm about a mile and a half away from home. If I have to, I can kick in the afterburners. It's all good. And they're moving northeast, so they're going to miss Butler, right? Okay, I get on Federal Street, and I make it back up to State Road 6. And I'm heading east now. And all of a sudden I feel thump, thump, thump. And I'm thinking, oh man, I'm getting slow, or I'm really doing some sweating, because now even my head's got drops of sweat falling on it. And then it picks up. So I pick up the pace. I'm thinking, I can see the sunshine in the east. It can't be catching me, right? It caught me. And by the time I got to, 1 and 6, I'm pretty much a drowned rat, got water dripping off my glasses, can't see. No place to put them because, well, you can't just hold them because you'll mess them up, bend them and such. So I fly home, right? Just drenched. Thinking, man, Lord, I even asked you while I was down on Walnut Street, Lord, push that storm a little north so I can get home. Just let me get home without getting drowned. Well, that didn't happen. I got drowned. So I get home and I sit down on the couch there and got water dripping off me, and I got a wash right and cleaning my head off. I'm thinking, why in the world? I had planned on going long today. Now I only got a cruddy 4 miles in. Yay. That song's playing on the TV. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is terrible. Lord, I can't believe you did me that way. And then I hear that song. And it reminded me, but God. You see, God had something in mind. I didn't know he had something in mind, but he did. And I imagine he got a little chuckle out of heaven. Said, I want this, I'm going to get him wet, I'm going to make him run, he's going to run fast, and he's going to be out of breath because he's old and out of shape. But I got something. But God. You see, for those who are visiting us today, we've been going through the letter to the Philippian church. And for those that don't know, Paul was under house arrest at this time. Now, he didn't have an ankle bracelet on like what we would think of for house arrest today. Instead of having an ankle bracelet, he had a royal guard, an imperial guard. Technical word for it is an Praetorian guard. That means the guard is probably related to Caesar in some way, and he would be today what we would call the equivalent of, let's say, a Marine Recon, a Navy SEAL, perhaps an airborne ranger. So he's chained to one of these guys, right? And this guy's full battle dress the whole time he's there. He has this oath that he has to take if he's going to be one of these guards. That if any prisoner ever escapes, he's going to fall on his sword. Or he's going to hunt him down and kill him himself. You see, this is probably a little bit more motivation than an ankle bracelet going beep, 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 beep. Because this guard was highly motivated. His life depended on making sure that you stayed in line. And see, Paul was under lock and key because he just wouldn't shut up about Jesus. He wouldn't quit planting churches. He wouldn't quit stirring up trouble for the Roman Empire. You see, because the Romans, they really liked those artificial demigods. And it was big money for them. I mean, they melt these temples like you wouldn't believe. And as people were getting converted, they were losing revenue. And you know what happens when people lose revenue? That like revenue? They get just a little cranky. And they were just a little cranky with it. So they threw him in jail. Well, house arrest. Which is really neat because he had the freedom to live on his own, but he couldn't go anywhere to make any money. So he had to pay for it himself. So the Philippian church and Paul, they were really close. Paul had planted that church. And the Philippians were really concerned about Paul. So they send Epaphroditus with a letter and a monetary support to Paul. And I'm sure in this letter, they expressed their concern for him, saying, oh, man, we're really sorry this has happened to you. I mean, Is there anything we can do to help? Here's Epaphroditus to help you. Here's a little bit of money. We took up a love offering for you, to kind of help with your expenses and such. And what we're going to read today, our text comes from Philippians 1 in verse 12 through 14. And this is Paul's response to them. He says, I want you to know, brothers, that what has happened to me has really served to advance the gospel. So it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Christ. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word without fear. Did I just read that correctly? Paul was in prison. Terrible situation. A tragic situation. Many of us, if we were thrown in prison, right now, stormtroopers come busting in and drag us all out. There's enough evidence to prove you're Christian. You're going to jail. And we're going to chain you to a soldier who's under the death threat if you get away. I think a lot of us would be singing the old hymn, Why Me? Why me? We'd be saying, Lord, what did I do? I was good. I went to church on Sundays. I threw a 20 in the plate. Try to do my best. Why? What did I do? You see, because this is a no-win situation. You can't just get a lawyer and get out of this. There is no getting away from the Roman Empire. But God. And that's the key to this. But God. Did you see there in that first verse? God had a plan. God has given us 66 books throughout His Bible. He has told us tragic situation after tragic situation from the human perspective. And every one of those tragic situations, every one of those no-win situations starts out the same way. But God. Maybe we're a lot like Job's friends, who are convinced that even though Job still professed to have faith and was still a good man, they were sure that he was somehow a sinner. That somehow Job had some secret sin, and that's why God was striking him down. Obviously, they didn't read the first chapter of Job and know that God had let Satan put him to the test to prove a point to Satan that Job was a righteous man. And that he wasn't just serving out of compulsion or out of blessing. Or maybe we're like the disciples in John 9. Now as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth. And the disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned? Him or his parents? Obviously this man is blind. There's got to be a sinner in the woodpile somewhere, and it must be him. It must be his parents since he was born blind. But did you see the but God? In that very next verse, but God. And Jesus answered them and said, neither this man nor his parents have sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. But God. The turning point in every one of our tragic situations, whether it's tragic to us or we just think it's tragic or however it is, that's always the point. But God. You see, this man was born blind with a purpose. His tragedy had meaning. God had a plan. That someday Jesus would walk by this man. He would heal him. And this man wouldn't just be healed. This man would get drugged before the Sanhedrin, the Jewish high court, and get grilled twice. His parents would get drugged into court, and they would get grilled. And he says something that all of us know. His response to them is beautiful. I don't know whether this man's a sinner or a prophet, a saint, or what he is. But this one thing I know. I was blind, and now I see. And here we are, 2,000 plus years since that point in history. And that story still encourages us. It still gives us hope. You see, a lot of times our situations aren't just for us. They're for those who are around us, so that God can reveal His glory. This unnamed man throughout history is probably one of the most talked about, quoted people. But what did the disciples say? He was a sinner. His parents were sinners. Verse 12, I want you to know, brothers, that this has happened to me so that the gospel may advance. You see, it was God who sent Paul to prison. See, Paul knew he needed to get to Rome. And I find this so interesting. Paul wanted to get to Rome. He needed to get to Rome to preach it in Rome. And God got him there. And the Romans paid for the trip. They transported him. They kept him under guard. He made it all the way there on their boat, eating their food. But God had a plan. While he's in prison, the purpose of him being there was to preach to the imperial guard and to preach to all of Caesar's household. Did you catch that? In this next verse, all who heard him were converted. Now that may be shocking to some of us to think that God would allow a tragedy to come into our life, especially when we hear so much about, God's like great big old Santa Claus in heaven and you just ask and he'll give you any old thing you want. It's not what happens. God's going to give you everything you need. And he's going to bring things into your life that's going to cause you to grow and cause you to be closer to him. And then those things, those tragedies that we think they are, he's going to use them as a testimony later. I have heard a lot of your testimonies. And I know that if it wasn't for a terrible thing in your life, you wouldn't be where you are today. I know that's how God got my attention. He had to bring some stuff in, and it was not pleasant. But if he wouldn't have, I wouldn't be here. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are now much more bold to speak without fear. You see, Paul's imprisonment didn't just convert the imperial guard, didn't just convert the servants that were there. Because of this, the gospel went out through the entire Roman Empire there in the area of Italy. You see, many Roman guards got converted. Many of Caesar's household were converted. Many of those people were drawn out of the darkness of that idolatry, that pagan religion, and into the light of Christ. Many who were once afraid to share their faith were now boldly speaking of the Lord. We're now out in the streets preaching the gospel. How many people have read this letter to the Philippian church? From the time Paul wrote this letter, somewhere around 60 AD to 66 AD. Can anyone guess how many people have read this letter? It's a number we can't even comprehend. And from that point until now, everyone who has received encouragement and strength and drawn closer to the Lord, that has all happened because Paul was put in prison. How many of your testimonies will last for this many years? We're talking thousands of years. All because of a tragic situation. You see, if it wasn't for Paul going to jail, we wouldn't be hearing this sermon today. If it wasn't for Paul going to jail, the Philippian church would have never got this letter. And all those people from now to here, and all those people from here forward till the Lord comes back, who read this and are drawn closer, all of those people will be strengthened and encouraged, and God's purpose of putting Paul in jail will be revealed. You see, each of us has a tragic situation. Each of us have been through tragedies. And our tragedies, while they are for us to a degree, they help shape us, they mold us, they refine us. You see, you can't take a diamond out of the earth, and it's a diamond and it's worth something. You have to polish it with sandpaper. It's coarse. It's rough, and the edges have to be polished. Without that friction, without that tension, there is no polish. If anybody's ever seen steel being made, without heat, you don't get steel. Without heat, you don't weld. You see, without heat, gold isn't refined, and neither is silver. Because in that heat, it releases the impurities. And the impurities are scraped off. When God is pushing us and pressuring us and putting us in the crucible, it is for us to refine us. But there's a secondary part to it. It's not just for us. See, it's for us to share. How many of you have heard a testimony, say of someone important or famous like Mother Teresa, thinking, oh my goodness, what did that woman do? How did she do that? And been encouraged. She was in a tragic situation in Calcutta all those years. What about Corrie ten Boom and the abuse she suffered at the hands of the Nazis? If it wasn't for tragic situations, we wouldn't have such stern testimonies. In each of our life, if life experience has taught us anything, is we will all face tragedies. Every one of us. No one will escape it. No matter how hard you try or how much money you have or how strong you think you are physically, it will happen. Before we hang our heads in defeat and despair, start singing the why me's. Just ask God. Say, Lord, what are you up to? What are you doing? How can you be glorified in this situation? How can you be strengthened? How can this help somebody else? You see, because Job didn't go all through that for the sake of Job. Job went through it for us. Paul went through it for us. This blind man went through it for us. Paul, so we would have a record of those testimonies and be strengthened and encouraged. When we're in these tragedies, try to look through it. Look beyond it. Ask God some questions. What's going on? But always trust Him. And always keep in mind that triumph is just but God away. You see, because God is always greater than our grief. God is always stronger than our situation. God is always more powerful than our problem. And every day He is turning tragedy into triumph. How many of you could raise your hand today and say, I have been in a tragic situation where grief was winning, where pain was winning, where illness was winning, but God? How many can raise your hand and say that? All of us can. We all can say, but God. We have absolutely no reason to despair. No reason to let this world win. No reason, because we already are victors in Christ.
That's right.
Sometimes we may have to wait a little bit. And sometimes we might get bloody, bruised, and battered. But God. Every time. But God. Let's all stand. With every head down and every eye closed. Wanda would play just a little bit. Lord, I know that each and every one of us have faced something. And maybe someone's going through stuff right now. Maybe it's a tragedy. But God, we know that you, in the middle of every battle, have it under control. And at some point, you're going to turn it around. I don't know where you guys are at in that journey. And I don't know what God may have planned for you. But this I do know. I believe that prayer is effective. I am thoroughly convinced that God can turn any situation around. And I won't embarrass you for the world, but if you would like me to pray for you, just raise your hand. Just slip it up real quick and I'll pray for you. I see those hands. Thank you. O Lord our God, it is with humble hearts and heavy hearts that we bow before you. Lord, we commit each of these situations into your life. You promised us in your word, and we're going to stand on that promise that everything that we commit to you is safe until you return. So we commit each and every one of these into your hand, Lord. And we pray you, O Lord, be honored and glorified through whatever it is that we go through in this life. I would ask that you would bless us with eyes big enough to see beyond the moment. I would ask that you would give us hands and feet strong enough to continue to stand, to proclaim your gospel. Oh Lord, Have your will and way in each of us. In Jesus' name, amen. And our last song is